types of ecosystem. We come across different types of ecosystem, like we come across aquatic ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem, forest ecosystem. So there are different types of ecosystem. What is standing crop? The total biomass of an ecosystem is called as what? Standing crop. Components of ecosystem, as already said, abiotic components and biotic components. Abiotic component like light, temperature, soil, air. Biotic produces, consumers and decomposes. Hello everyone, welcome back to the revision class of 2nd PUC Biology, chapter 14 called Ecosystem. Myself, B. Shobharani from the Department of Biology, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, the Temple of Excellence. I think by seeing this picture itself, you can understand what are we going to discuss in this particular chapter, chapter 14 called Ecosystem. As we all know, ecosystem is the structural and functional unit of nature and biosphere. What is the weightage of marks for this particular chapter called Ecosystem? From examination point of view, the chapter weightage is 4 marks. How is it distributed? You get 1 marker question, 1 question, and 3 marker question, 1 question. So the weightage, total weightage of marks for this particular chapter is 4 marks, which is distributed like this: 1 marker question, 1 question, and 3 marker question, 1 question. Or it might be again, as I said, 2 plus 1, that is 3. Right? Moving on to the chapter introduction. As I already said, ecosystem is the structural and functional unit of nature or biosphere, which comprises of both abiotic and biotic components, that is the non-living and living components. So hence we call the ecosystem as there is an interaction between the living and the non-living components in an ecosystem. Hence we say ecosystem is the structural and functional unit of biosphere. As I said, ecosystem comprises of both abiotic and biotic components. So what will be the abiotic components? The abiotic components include like light, temperature, water, soil and air. So what are the abiotic components? Light, temperature, water, soil and air. What are the biocomponents? That is the living components, namely the producers, that is the plants. Usually we call the plants as what? Producers. Next comes the consumers, that is the primary consumer, which might be a herbivore, secondary consumer, that is the carnivores, and decomposers, which play a very great role in an ecosystem in degrading the dead and organic matter and releasing the nutrients back to the environment. So biotic components comprises of producers, consumers and decomposers. Moving on to the synopsis part. Ecosystem, as I already said, what are the structure and function of an ecosystem? The structural and functional units of the ecosystem comprises of what? Productivity, decomposers, energy flow and nutrient cycle. Now, what are the types of ecosystem? We come across different types of ecosystem, like we come across aquatic ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem, forest ecosystem. So there are different types of ecosystem. Next, what is productivity? It is nothing but the increase of the organic matter or biomass per unit area given time is called as what? Productivity. So what is productivity? It is the increase in the biomass or an organic matter per unit area at a given time. Then types of productivity, that is, as I said, in general, if we say productivity, the production of biomass, you call it as productivity. What are the 2 types of productivity? We come across the primary productivity and the secondary productivity. Then what are the factors influencing the primary productivity? All that you are going to study in this particular chapter. Then decomposition. What is decomposition? As we know, it is a very, very important process in an ecosystem where the dead organic matter is broken down into organic and inorganic substances like carbon dioxide, water and nutrients. The whole mechanism is called as what? Decomposition, which is brought about by decomposers or detrivores, dirt eaters. Like for example, we know about earthworm. Earthworm plays a very great role in decomposing the dead organic matter that is found in the soil into nutrients and also loosening the soil and making it for good aeration. Hence, we call earthworm as farmer's friend. What are the steps involved in decomposition, like fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humification, and mineralization? What are the factors influencing decomposition? Decomposition is a process which is mainly depending upon the oxygen content. So lesser the oxygen, lesser will be the rate of decomposition. And even the decomposing matter also matters a lot for the process of decomposition. Then energy flow. What is energy flow? Energy flow refers to a particular food chain in an ecosystem. Energy flow refers to a particular food chain in an ecosystem. So producers, consumers, and that is food chain. That is the energy flow, that is the producers, consumers. Then we come across food chain and trophic levels. What is food chain? It is the transfer of energy from one trophic level to the another trophic level, repeatedly eating and by eaten. So trophic levels, for example, producers form one trophic level, then the consumers form that another. So there are four trophic levels: primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, and decomposers. So we have four trophic levels. Then ecological pyramid, it is nothing but a schematic representation of the food chains in an ecosystem. Then types of succession, like we have two types of succession, that is the hydrar succession, where it takes place in water, and the succession series. So there are ecological pyramids. So it is the schematic representation of the various food chains in an ecosystem. So what are the types of succession we come across? We come across two types of succession, that is hydrar succession and Zeerach succession. Hydrar succession, it starts or it takes place in water, and the succession series progress from water to mesic condition. In Zeerach condition, it takes place in dry areas, and the succession series progresses from that is xeric to mesic conditions. Then nutrient cycling. So it is the cyclical movement of the nutrients between the living organisms and the environment. We have two types of nutrient cycle. One is called the gaseous cycle, the other one is called the sedimentary cycle. For gaseous cycle, we can give an example of carbon cycle. And for sedimentary cycle, we can give an example of phosphorus cycle. So the reservoir for gaseous cycle like carbon is the atmosphere, and the reservoir for the sedimentary cycle like phosphorus cycle is the Earth's crust. Moving on to the type of questions that are going to be asked pertaining to this particular chapter called ecosystem. What is one marker question? What is the starting point of a grazing food chain and detritus food chain respectively? As we know, food chain is of two types, that is the grazing food chain and the detritus food chain. In a grazing food chain, it will start with whom? With the producers. Whereas detritus food chain starts with decomposition, right? Next, define food web. The natural interconnection of several food chains form food web. It provides alternative pathway for food availability. So what is food web? The natural interconnection of several food chains form food web. It provides alternative pathway for food availability. Next, what is 10% law? This is a very familiar question which is asked in the board examination. So when the energy flows from one trophic level to another trophic level, so what amount of energy passes from one trophic level to another trophic level? According to Lindemann, a scientist, in 1942, during the transfer of energy from one trophic level to another, only 10% is shared at higher level. Rest of 90% is lost in the form of respiration through heat. So hence it is called as what? 10% law. Now moving on to the next question, what is standing state? This is also a very common question which is asked in the examination. The amount of nutrient like carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, etc. present in soil at any given time is called as what? Standing state. Then define trophic level. Successive stage of energy flow in ecosystem are known as what? Trophic levels. For example, producers form one trophic level, primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. Next, who coined the term ecosystem? It was Arthur Transley. Then, what is productivity? Already I explained. What is productivity? The rate of synthesis of organic matter or biomass is called as what? Productivity. Next, define net productivity. Amount of organic biomass available for the consumption to heterotrophs is called net primary productivity. It is called N, that is NPP is equal to gross primary productivity minus respiration loss. How do we get NPP? Gross primary productivity, that is GPP, minus respiration loss is called as what? Net primary productivity. So, net primary productivity is equal to gross primary productivity minus respiration loss. Why pyramid of energy is always upright? Like for example, pyramid of number of a tree is inverted. But why pyramid of energy is always upright? Because the energy flow from one trophic level to the next level, some energy is always lost as heat at each step. Hence it is called upright. Next, what is standing crop? We came across standing state. What is standing crop? The total biomass of an ecosystem is called as what? Standing crop. Moving on to the 3-marker question. Define decomposition and describe the process and products of decomposition. Already I said, what is decomposition? It is the breakdown of the dead organic matter into simpler soluble organic and inorganic nutrients which is going back to the environment. So what is breakdown of complex organic matter by decomposers into inorganic substances like carbon dioxide, water, nutrients, etc. is called what? Decomposition. As I already said, what is the prime factor that is responsible for decomposition? As you know, it is an oxygen requiring process. More the oxygen, more will be the rate of decomposition. Lesser the oxygen, lesser will be the rate of decomposition. So what are the steps involved? Fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humification, mineralization. All these are the different steps involved in the process of decomposition. So this question called define decomposition and describe the process and products of decomposition is very important from examination point of time. Then fragmentation, the very word itself will tell you. It is the breakdown of detritus. What is detritus? The dead organic matter into smaller particles by detrivores. Dirt eaters. As we know, decomposers are also called as what? Natural scavengers. For example, like earthworm. Then leaching. What is leaching? It is the process by which water-soluble inorganic nutrients go to down, that is to the soil, percolate through the soil horizon and get precipitated as unavailable salts. So first is fragmentation, second one is leaching. So what is the third step? Third step is catabolism, fourth step is humification, fifth step is what? Mineralization. What is catabolism? The very word itself will tell you, it is breakdown. So decomposers like bacteria and fungi secrete enzymes which decompose, which break the detritus into what? Into simple inorganic compounds like carbon dioxide, water and nutrients. Humification, process of formation of humus. So when we call it as fertile soil, what is fertile soil? A soil which is having humus is called as what? Fertile soil. So process of formation of humus. Humus we call it as what? Fertile soil. During decomposition of organic matter in the soil and accumulation of dark colored amorphous substance is called humus. If at all they ask what is humus? Dark colored amorphous substance in the soil, we call it as what? Humus. Mineralization, release of inorganic nutrients due to the degradation of humus by some microbes. Product of decomposition is called what? Humus. So all these are the different steps that are involved in the process of decomposition, that is fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humification and mineralization. Moving on to the next question. Even this question is very important from examination point of view. Primary succession starts afresh in a new area, but secondary succession will start where already the natural habitat was there but it was destroyed. So describe the primary succession that takes place in water body. Succession of plants takes place in wetter areas is called what? Hydrars. Hydrar succession is a succession which takes place in water, and the succession series progress from water to, that is from hydric to mesic condition. So succession series progress from hydric to mesic conditions. Here phytoplanktons are the pioneer species. So in an hydrate succession, phytoplanktons will be the pioneer species. In xerids, lichens will be the pioneer species. So primary succession takes place in water. Phytoplankton to submerged plant stage, submerged plant stage to submerged free floating plant stage, submerged free floating stage to red swamp stage, marsh meadow stage to next to scrub stage, then to forest, which forms the climax community. With time, water body is converted into land. So this is called the primary succession that takes place in water body. Next question. How does phosphorus cycle operate in an ecosystem? Explain with diagram. When we study about the nutrient cycling, which is also called as biogeochemical cycle, which is the cyclical movement of nutrients between the living organisms and the environment. So as I said, there are two types. One is called the gaseous cycle, the other one is called sedimentary cycle. For gaseous cycle, the carbon cycle is an example where the reservoir will be the atmosphere, whereas for sedimentary cycle, which is the Earth's crust is the reservoir, the example will be the phosphorus cycle. So phosphorus cycle is an example for sedimentary cycle. So it is a sedimentary cycle. Rock and natural phosphate deposits are the main sources of phosphorus. That is, as I already said, Earth's crust is the reservoir for phosphorus. When rock is weathered, what will happen? Minute amount of phosphate dissolve in soil solution and are absorbed by plants. Herbivores and other animals obtain phosphorus from the plants. The waste product and dead organism are decomposed by phosphate solubilizing bacteria releasing phosphorus. So what will be the schematic representation of phosphorus cycle? So here we can see producers, from producers to consumers, consumers to detritus, and even the litter fall, that is all the dead leaves all. Then the detritus will go to the soil solution where the process of decomposition will happen, and the weathering of rock will also lead to the rock minerals. From there again it goes. So this is like, it's a cyclic process, right? So this is the schematic representation of phosphorus cycle. From here again you can see it will go to the producer. From the soil solution and from the rock, when it goes to the weathering of rock, back it goes to the producer, that is the plants, from the plants to the consumers. Now, what is ecosystem services? Explain. It's a very important question from examination point of view. The benefits that we obtain from the ecosystem is called ecosystem service. Yes, of course, like we are benefited a lot by the ecosystem. So what will be the benefits? The processes by which the environment produces resources that we often take for granted is known as ecosystem services. So what will be the benefits of the environment or the ecosystem? As we all know, purify air and water, responsible for decomposition of waste materials, involved in nutrient cycle, helps in pollinate crops, maintain biodiversity. See, we get lot of medicinal plants, we get a lot of products from the forest in the form of food, and even as we know, the food what we eat also comes from the ecosystem. All these are the ecosystem services what we get, the human mankind get from the ecosystem. What draw an ideal pyramid? What is pyramid? Ecological pyramids, as I said, it is a graphical representation of various food chains in an ecosystem. So there is pyramid of energy, pyramid of number, and pyramid of biomass. So draw an ideal pyramid of energy and mention the units. The graphical representation that shows the amount of energy in each trophic level of an ecosystem. So primary consumers, PP stands for primary producers, PC stands for primary consumers, SC stands for secondary consumers, TC stands for tertiary consumers. As I said, always as I said, primary producers, the pyramid will be broad. As it goes about to the tertiary consumers, it becomes narrow. So here 10,000 joules producer from the primary producers. From the primary producers, if it goes to primary consumers, it will be 1,000. And when it goes to secondary consumers, it will be 100 joules. Then from secondary consumers to tertiary consumers, it will be 10 joules. So this is very important from examination point of view. They'll ask ecological pyramid of energy or pyramid of biomass or pyramid of number. Then what are the learning outcomes at the end of this chapter called ecosystem? What are you going to learn? So you'll be able to define and classify ecosystem, describe the structure and basic functions of ecosystem, already I explained, define productivity, that is primary productivity and secondary productivity, and differentiate between them, what is primary productivity and secondary. Define and describe the steps involved in decomposition, differentiate between grazing food chain and detritus food chain, then define and describe the different types of ecological pyramids and their limitations. Then describe ecological succession. As I said, there are two types of succession, primary and secondary succession. Then what are the two types of, that is hydra succession and xerar succession. Then differentiate between them, define standing state, biogeochemical cycles or nutrient cycle, the types, that is the sedimentary and gaseous cycle. Describe the carbon and phosphorus cycles operating in nature, enumerate and describe the ecosystem survey. All these are the learning outcomes you are going to get at the end of this particular chapter called ecosystem. So these many things you are going to learn, these many concepts you are going to learn at the end of this chapter called ecosystem. Let me go back to the recap. Just let us understand like a summary. So what are the types of ecosystem? We have natural ecosystem and artificial ecosystem. It is naturally made, artificial like man-made ecosystem. Then we come across in natural ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. Then in terrestrial we come across forest, we come across grassland, we come across desert. So what are the types that are included in aquatic ecosystem? Freshwater ecosystem, and then we have freshwater and marine water ecosystem. Then for freshwater we have example like ponds, lakes, streams, etc. Then self-water, that is what we call it as seawater ecosystem. We have wetlands, estuaries, etc. Components of ecosystem, as already said, abiotic components and biotic components. Abiotic component like light, temperature, soil, air. Biotic producers, consumers and decomposers. Structure of an ecosystem, when we study, as I said, it leads to species composition and stratification, and types of ecological succession, primary succession and secondary succession. Secondary succession is faster than compared to primary succession. So primary succession has to start afresh, but whereas in case of secondary succession, already there is an existed natural components, but they have been destroyed. So the succession is very fast in case of secondary succession. Then function of an ecosystem, as I said, the very important functional units of an ecosystem are productivity, decomposition, energy flow and nutrient cycle. So productivity, again primary productivity and secondary productivity. Decomposition, already explained, fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humidification and mineralization. Then in energy flow, as I said, energy flow is the transfer of energy from one trophic level to another trophic level, like from food chain, trophic level, ecological pyramids. Then in nutrient cycle, we come across gaseous cycle and sedimentary cycle. Gaseous cycle, carbon cycle is an example. For sedimentary cycle, phosphorus is an example. Then succession in plants, hydrar succession. Then xerar succession. As I already said, in hydrar succession, it takes place in water, and the succession series progress from water to, that is from wet to mesic condition. In xerar, it takes place in dry areas, and the succession series progress from dry, that is from xeric to mesic conditions. So the pioneer species, free floating angiosperm, rooted hydrophytes and grasses and trees. Trees will form the climax community. Then xerar succession, which starts from a bare rock. Secretion of lichens are the pioneer species. Phytoplanktons are the pioneer species in case of hydrar succession. In case of xerar succession, lichens will be the pioneer species. So emergence of very small plants succeeded by bigger plants and trees, climax forest community. Then ecological pyramids, food chains and trophic levels. So as I said, energy flows from different, energy is flowing from one trophic level to other. That is from primary producers to primary consumers to secondary consumers to tertiary consumers. So what are the examples you are going to take for primary? Grasses, trees. Example for primary consumers, that is the herbivores like cow and grasshopper. Then the secondary consumers, the carnivores like bird, fish, wolf. Then tertiary consumer is man and lion. So in ecological pyramid we have, so as I said, the ecological pyramid is a graphical representation of different food chains in an ecosystem. Pyramid of number, pyramid of biomass and pyramid of energy. Types of food chain, we have two types, grazing food chain and detritus food chain. Hope you all have understood the important concepts what I have explained in this particular chapter called ecosystem from the board examination point of view. Thank you.